Welcome back to the She Inspires podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jade, board certified family medicine physician, wellness and weight loss specialist, owner of the membership medical practice in Las Vegas, Inspire Primary Care. And you know, this is the safe space where busy professional women chat about balancing business and wellness. And y'all, I'm going to just tell you right now, get your pens and your paper out because this episode is about to be loaded with the gems. I have the amazing Dr. Una on today. And before I tell her to welcome and introduce herself, let me give her a little bit of a snapshot of an intro, y'all. This is a woman I deeply admire who has been an unofficial mentor to me. And I am so excited to have her on the podcast today. So Dr. Una is a Christian physician. She is a homeschool mom of 4. She is a wife of over 18 years. She owns multiple 7+ figure businesses. And she is an amazing serial entrepreneur and author and speaker. Are y'all ready? Do you have your pens? Do you have them? Because the gems are about to be dropped. Dr. Una, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I've followed you and your journey. At this point, I can say for years. And it's nice that we get to talk and everybody gets to be part of the conversation. This will be fun.
Yes, this is an honor. I'm asking the questions for myself, but I know this is also so many questions that people are asking me. And I'm like, honey, I'm in the infantile stages of all of this. And so I know this will not only fill my cup, but also be so many gems for other women. So thank you for agreeing to do this and allowing us to take a moment of your precious time.
Absolutely. It's my honor.
So tell the fam, I gave a little snapshot, and I know a lot about you from following your journey and all that you share, but tell the fam who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Una Chukwu. Everybody calls me Una for obvious reasons. Even my sister, fun fact, she calls me Dr. Una. It's so funny. But I am professionally, I'm a pediatrician. I would say retired at this point, but I'm a pediatrician by training. I am a serial entrepreneur. My first business was my private practice, which I still own. I just don't physically see patients in the office. And, that was my first baby. And then I went on to found a company called EntreMD. And that is a company where I help doctors learn how to build profitable businesses so they can live life and practice medicine on their terms. One of the fun things for me is that I get to homeschool my babies. I have 4 children. 16, 14, 10, and 9. And, in the beginning as an entrepreneur, I had, to put in the work to get things off the ground and all of that. But one of the greatest rewards I've, had is I have the time now to invest all that I know and all that I am in my kids. And it's, an absolutely amazing journey. So at this stage of my career, what I do is really support doctors. That's what, that's professionally, that's what I do. And it's such an honor because doctors are some of the kindest, smartest, most giving humans, and just to equip them with business systems so they can figure out how to do this and stay in it is just magical. So, yeah.
The work you do is absolutely amazing. I shared this with you off camera, but this podcast is because of you. I listened to the Entre and Dean podcast. I've read your books, which we'll get into all of that. And you have stressed the importance of speaking and physician entrepreneurs putting themselves out there, going on social media. I didn't go live before you coached through that on your podcast and all these things. People ask me now, like, oh, is it natural and all of that? And I tell them, no, like I am constantly outside of my comfort zone. I avoided a podcast and going live and all the things for as long as I could, but I can't tell you how many wins I have gotten just from the work that you do and the knowledge that you share. So thank you for what you do. And I didn't tell you this off camera, but I also wanted to say thank you before I jump into the next question, because you may not know this or remember this. I don't know how many people you do this for, but the 1-year anniversary of my medical practice, Inspire Primary Care, I got a handwritten note from you. And you said that, congratulating me on the practice. And it was like after that year, I had different challenges that came up of, growing a business, and I carried that card around with me for like a year. And when I had hardships, I would look at it and it would inspire me and encourage me. So thank you for all you do. Like, it's a big deal. You do so much more. You do so much on camera, but there's so much you do behind camera too. That's just kind and valuable. So
Yes, I had no idea about that. That is amazing. It's going to make me do it a lot more. But I want to tell you something, though. I want to say thank you to you because the physician community is at a stage where business is not mainstream. Running podcasts is not mainstream. Dominating on stage is not necessarily a mainstream thing. And so we need as many vision boards as possible, people that show other people just by being that, oh, of course this is possible for you, right? And you are
Right.
one of those people because
Thank
you have the
you.
podcast, you're doing the speaking, you're building the practice and all of that. And I know it's hard. There's no such thing as easy entrepreneurship. I know that it's hard, but I want to say, like, thank you for doing that. Thank you in this time for being a vision board, because at some point, as we hit that critical mass, things are going to change for the physician community, but it takes people like you and I to rise for that critical mass to be hit. So thank you. You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do. So, I want to transition. I want you to take us back because we have a lot of similarities. And I'm like, Dr. Una's my soul sister. She just doesn't know. But one of the similarities is, I started my practice, Inspire Primary Care, straight from residency. Most people thought I was crazy. And you started your private practice and you shared that it was a few years. You can clarify on specifically how many, but a few years after residency. And you grew and scaled a very successful 7-figure plus private practice. You're a pediatrician by trade. So, can you share with us the journey of opening your private practice, growing it, and scaling it?
Yeah, let's start off by saying ignorance is bliss, okay? That's the full disclaimer here. So, after residency, I got a job. I trained at Newark Beth Israel in New Jersey, and I got a job in Georgia. So I moved to Georgia. I wanted to be in the South, and it was an amazing job. My boss he worked at a NICU, a neonatal ICU, and so because of that, he could not work in his practice because there was a conflict of interest and all of that. So think of it as I was a solo pediatrician working in this practice, had one medical assistant, one front desk. It was 10 minutes from my house. I did lunch every day at home with my family. It was just absolutely amazing. And so um, I signed a 1-year contract because I was moving from a different state. I didn't know if I was going to want to be there. And my boss comes 9 months into the contract. He's like, okay, let's talk about renewing your contract. And he gave me a 5-year contract. Okay. So at this point, I had been married for 3 years. I had just finished a 3-year residency. So my definition of forever was 3 years. Okay. So when I saw the 5-year contract, I was like, yeah, no, we can't do that. But I was going to move anyway. I needed to move. Where we were going to move to was an hour away. So I wasn't going to be able to stay anyway. So I told him, really enjoyed working here. Happy to train whoever you bring on, but I will not be able to stay after my first year. And so he said, well, if you're not going to stay, start a practice. I looked
Hmm.
at him like he was insane. I said, nobody starts a practice 15 months out of residency. This is not a thing. And in case you missed this nice, beautiful, ginormous bump here, I'm pregnant. Like there's nothing that makes this the right thing to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, listen, the baby will need you a lot in the beginning. The practice won't need you as much. And the baby will grow up and will need you less, and the practice will need you more. It's like, perfect. This is the time to start your practice. And you're solo here. So you're practically doing most of what you're going to need to do anyway. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And so I was like, whatever. The seed had been sown, but I couldn't see how that could be possible. But the seed was sown. So I started looking at websites, what are pediatric practices like? What services do they offer? I read the reviews. What do people say they like about these offices? What do they hate about them? Started doing things like that. I had another mentor who's like, it's time for you to start thinking about starting a business. I was telling my husband and I. And so ignorance is bliss. I was like, yeah, we'll do that. Okay. So we started looking for a location. Couldn't even conceptualize a build out. It broke my brain. Like, I'm going to get a place. I'm going to pay a ton of money to renovate it. And it's not my space. Like, make this make sense. And so I was like, Lord Jesus, I just need a place that some doctor was in already. So I don't have to do any build out. There must be a place like that.
Mm-hmm.
So found a place an OBGYN had moved out of. And it was perfect. 3 exam rooms, a doctor's office, all that stuff. And so we signed the lease. It's like amazing. We're in business now. Got utilities turned on, all of that stuff. And so I hung the shingle, right? My philosophy was hang the shingle and they will come. So I hung the shingle. They did not come.
Uh-huh.
Nobody came. And I was like a deer caught in headlight. If I did not have a lease I had signed, like all of those things, I would have just gone back to my hiding place. Like that. I'm not cut out for this because at that time I was a super shy, socially awkward, introverted introvert. I was not going to do anything an entrepreneur needed to do. I was not going to go talk to referral sources. I was not going to ask people to come work with me. I definitely was not going to have my face on the World Wide Web. Like I wasn't going to do any of those things. And so my husband was like, well, until you get all the patients you want. Your job is to get all the patients you want. And so I died 1,000 deaths, right? And I just assumed, I'm always going to suck at this because I'm not that kind of person. And these people are running great practices. They're just better than me. And it is what it is. Until one day I was reading a Brian Tracy book, Eat That Frog. And he said, all business skills are learnable. I still remember that line. All business skills I learned about. It's like, hang
Mm-hmm.
on. 10,000 light bulbs went off because I said, I may not know how to market, how to sell, how to build a team, or any of those things, but I definitely know how to learn. I'm a
Exactly.
physician. This is what we
Yes.
do. I know how to do that. So I started thinking about it. I said, so wait a minute. So all these people running these great practices are not better than me. They just have skills I don't have. I was like, game on. And so I started learning how to hire, how to fire, how to build company culture, look at profit and loss statements without breaking out in hives, put myself out there, all of that. The internet came much later, but all of those things. And the practice grew. I think we hit our seven figure mark in the third year. Like practice
Wow.
grew. It was amazing. And I hired somebody who worked every Friday. So I had a long weekend every weekend. I was working a 4-day week. It's just magical. It was beautiful. It doesn't mean they have its challenges, but it's just magical. It was good. And then in 2016, I had this awareness like, medicine as we know it is gone. And if all you know how to do is just see patients, you're going to be out of luck.
Mm-hmm.
And so that happened. And, early on in the practice, I just knew I had to build this as a business asset. I need to build it as something that can work without me. Because I was like, I think I'm going to want to live 9 lives. And I'm going to give, being a pediatrician, seeing patients, I'm going to give that 10 years. And after that, I have to go do other stuff. And so that kind of led me on this journey of not building a practice as my job, but building a practice as a business asset.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest distinction is it can work without me. It will still have my flavor, my character, my philosophies, and all of that, whether I'm there or not. And so then I started hiring, started building processes and all of that. And so I got to, where I was like from 4 days a week to 3 days a week to 2 days a week to 1 day a week. 1 day a week, I hit that 5.5 years ago or so. And then some weeks I'll take the week off. It was very hilarious. And I did that for about 2.5 years. By 2.5 years, I knew that I was out of alignment again. Like this was time to leave. And we're
Mm-hmm.
physicians. We spent so many years becoming physicians and training and all. It's so deeply woven into your identity. But I started getting to a place where on Saturday I start having palpitations because after Saturday is Sunday, and after Sunday I have to go into the office. It's like
Mm.
there's no part of your life where you feel this way. Like so for you to
Mm.
feel this way, it means you're in a phase doing what you're not supposed to do. You
Wow.
know what I mean? Because I was like, it's not the work. I work hard everywhere else. I can work circles around people like 10 years younger than me. But I'm like, you're just out of alignment.
Yes.
And so that's when I was like, okay, you've built the system. You're only working a day a week, and some weeks you take that off. So clearly this is not working because of you.
Mm.
Right. And then and then I went all in on TrimD and all the other stuff we do. But that's kind of the short version of the story.
So I'm interested in the transition of making it where it can, okay, Inspire primary care members, I love you. Don't freak out in this next question, okay? But I am very interested because you are a speaker and you are an author, and I also love those aspects of gifting as well. And so how did that look in that transition in this is a business that can run without me? My patients, they joined initially because they loved me, but now they love the business and it still has the flavor to the point where you could take a permanent sabbatical and it is still a asset that has your flavor that is running without you being in the day to day. Like, what's the how?
So the how is baby steps,
Okay.
right? So some people do this. I see this all the time. And please hear me if you're thinking about this. It's a disaster. Do not do it. I'm so stressed out. I'm burnt out in my business. I'm just going to make it work without me, or I'm going to sell or whatever. This process is a multi-year process,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a process that would be painful. It is a process that will require your evolution, and I'll give you examples in a second. It will require your evolution. It is a process where you have setbacks, where you may have decided I'll do this in a year, but it took 2 years. But if it takes 2 years, like cry me a river, at
Yeah,
the end of the 2 years, you have a business that can work without you. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so
absolutely.
if it's not for somebody who is impatient, who is looking like, I want to make this passive, who's like, I'm just
Mm.
tired, it will frustrate the living daylights out of you. This is a very strategic, intentional, deliberate thing that someone who's resilient will pull off.
Got
So
it.
to start with, okay. So I did a lot of experiments. So I knew early on. So I'll give you the beginning of this. When I saw my first patient as an attending, so this is at my job. I was like, "What? I'm an attending now? The buck stops with me." I walked in, saw the patient, made my diagnosis, wrote the script, all of that. Walked out like, it was so anticlimactic because I walked out of the room thinking, so what I just did, I'm going to do that 25 times a day till I'm 65. I was like,
Right.
there's something terribly wrong here. And
Mm-hmm.
and I thought about it, I said, even in Walmart, somebody may start off stocking the shelves and they start managing the people who are stocking the shelves and they may manage a store. And like there's progression. Like I don't understand, like this is it. And so from the beginning, I had this thought process of I have to work my way out of this because this is
Mm.
just lateral and it's lateral forever. I was like, I
Yeah.
cannot do that. So let me give you a pathway. So when you start a practice or a business, it starts from starting the business, right? 'Cause I say that because so many people have the dream, but they never start it.
Right.
After that, the next focus is to make it profitable because what are you going to do with the profit? Hire the team that's going to run the business. So sometimes people launch it and they want to skip the profitable part and just go to team. I'm like, it does not work that way, right?
Yes.
So you get it to where it's profitable, cash flow positive. You know what you're doing. You're confident in your own skin. You understand what works for your clients, for patients, and what doesn't. All of that. Then you start building the team that will run the business. You go from being the person who generates revenue to the person who leads revenue generators. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the pathway, right? So I start my practice. In the beginning, it's all about overcoming all the mind drama about if I'm selling, if I'm marketing, am I a greedy doctor? Am I manipulating people? When is enough? All of that stuff. Overcoming all of that, understanding how to create revenue, how to sell, how to market, and you get the business to where it's profitable. It doesn't mean you won't have team members there, but they're typically not leaders. They're
Mm-hmm.
producers. They're
Yes.
people who can create those results with you. And so I started with that, right? So you heard me talk about getting it up to 1 million and all of that. Now, when it was time to build team, I did not have the confidence to bring another doctor on my payroll. That's a multiple six-figure addition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so the beginning, I was like, I can't do that, but I'm not going to not do anything. I can get somebody who only wants to work 1 day a week, and I only want them to work 1 day a week. So that's a win-win. So I bring this person in. What am I doing? I'm practicing hiring. I'm practicing onboarding. I'm practicing training my patients to go like, this is a team approach. It's not just me. You can see this other doctor. You see what I'm saying? Like, so
Yeah.
then I start putting my toe into getting other people on board. And then also I have days where I'm not in the office. So I can take note of what breaks, what falls apart, what breaks when I'm not there. So I can
Mm.
start fixing. You see how that's an experiment? And
Yes.
there's no chance of it being a disaster because this person is here 1 day a week.
Got it. Got
Right.
it.
And so then I go from that to another person who's part time. They work 3 days a week and all of that. Now we have a different kind of contract. Now we have to bring on benefits. Now, you know what I mean? They're there for longer. So more people are saying, no, I only want to see Dr. Un. I don't want to see this person. But I have this opportunity to manage all of that. So when I then went to 1 day, it wasn't a big transition because I
Yeah.
didn't go from 5 days a week to 1 day. I went from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1.
Yes.
And even when I left, I had been 1 day for 2.5 years.
Wow.
And so it didn't matter. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
One of the challenges I have, which is something many entrepreneurs have because your business feels like your baby, right? And you want to divorce this baby. Okay, it's not your baby. It's an asset. Okay. So
Yes.
even when I was not in the office, I'll call, I'll log in, see what's going on there, all these kind of crazy things. And so after I had my third child, I left the office for 5 weeks. I was not allowed to call. I was not allowed to do anything. Everything I thought of, I downloaded all of that. I was a practice, right? Like, can the practice work 5 weeks without me? Because if it
Mm-hmm.
can't work 5 weeks, it can't work 6 months.
Right.
Right. And so what I'm trying to say is I did all those baby steps and made it progressive. So it sounds like, wow, she took 2 years off. She took 3 years off. She retired, but it was not that drastic at all.
That
at
makes
all.
sense. Thank you for sharing that piece by piece, because we get to hear the high level, private practice, now it's running sabbatical, entre MD, but to hear how that happened is so helpful. Doable. It's doable. So thank you for that. And so this transitions into team, because it sounds like a key part of that being a reality. And even in entre MD and your other businesses, you talk a lot about building a team. We're in a season at Inspire Primary Care of building our team. So, you talk about A players, I believe you say. And so, what are some of your A player tips that you have to finding a team that really can run the thing?
Yeah, and so it starts with the evolution of the leader, because in the beginning we're doctors, and then we're physicians, become physician entrepreneurs, and then we become physician entrepreneurs who are also leaders. Because
Yes.
that's a totally different thing. I say this because many people, when I start working with them, they don't have meetings with their team. They've never cast vision with their team. Their
Mm,
teams don't have KRAs. Like, they're just people in the building. That's it. Right. So it
wow.
starts with, I am going to build an A team. I'm going to build a rock star team that can run this. So it's the personal evolution first,
Yeah.
because we have to understand that we are worthy of great teams. Because sometimes, like, who's going to follow me? Who's going to want to work with me? Like, my practice has so many issues, and maybe I should start there, like continue there, because people say I have so many issues and I don't want to bring people into the issues. Your business is a construction site. It will always have issues,
Mm,
always. And so you can't be I don't want you to be ashamed of it, because most people won't even do what you're doing, and most people who start what you're doing, they're not still in business. And so as
wow.
entrepreneurs, we need to hold our heads high. We started the businesses, our businesses are still here, and as you start crossing those milestones, like 80% fail at 5 years, and you're 5 years, you're just like, nobody can tell me anything. Not from a state of pride, right? Like, I don't listen to anybody and all that, but being proud of what you have. It's like
Yes.
the mom, right? Your mom. We don't wait for our kids to be Harvard trained heart surgeons to be proud of them. They could be spitting up, drooling, pooping everywhere, and we are so proud of our babies. And that's
Yes.
the way we want to be with our businesses, right? So the first is the evolution of the leader, and the second, it all falls under clarity. Okay, so number one, what is it that you actually want? Most people
Mm-hmm.
don't know that, right? So
Mm,
what happens is, want to hire a medical assistant. We go online, Google job description for medical assistant, right? Copy, paste, edit some words, boom, ad is out there. But that ad is for what somebody else wants. What do you want?
mm,
And so when we hire the person based on somebody else's job description that we got off of Google, we're mad that they're not giving us what we want. And the team can't even win because they don't even know what you want. It's like playing basketball and nobody knows where the basket is, right? And
yeah.
so the first thing is, don't copy and paste somebody else's job description. Sit and say, if I had a medical assistant and at the end of the year I'm like, oh my goodness, Dr. Una, this person is like the absolute best, blah, 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 blah. What would have to happen for you to say that? What does the person do? What are the person's traits? What are their competencies? All of those things. You've worked with people you don't like, put that there, who this is not for. You've worked with people that you do like, this is who this is for. That, the clarity alone makes your job description attract the right people and repel the wrong people. It makes it easier for you to have conversations when you're training, when you're evaluating, because it's clear. It gives your people the opportunity to win because they know what a win is. Otherwise, they
Mm-hmm.
don't know. It makes it easy for you to see someone at an interview and decide, yeah, this is not the person for me, because you're clear on what you want. Otherwise, you hire how I used to hire in the beginning. So the reason why I talk a lot about these things, because I did all these things, right? So I walk into an interview, I see the person is breathing. I like the person. Yay, come on board,
Right.
right?
Exactly. You're human. You want to work with me. Perfect.
Perfect. So you're exactly what I've been looking for. But the problem is, I didn't do the hard work, right? Because it's uncomfortable work. We just want to copy and paste or chat GPT or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
to sit and define, this is what I actually want.
Yeah.
That's the starting point, right? So you have to have for clarity. That's that clear job description. And then before the person comes to you, you want, and this is huge, you want to know, what are the key result areas, not the tasks. What are
Mm.
the key result areas? What are the outcomes I want this role to be responsible for? So
Wow.
let's say you have a practice administrator and you're just like, I want them to be the office manager. Not good enough. That person doesn't know what that means. And if they've worked 10 jobs, that is different in 10 different places. The
Mm-hmm.
clearer you are, the clearer you can articulate it, the bigger results they can get you. for instance. So practice administrator, I can say, you know what? I want to see 20 patients a day in my office. So one of your KRAs, your key result areas, is making sure that every day there's 20 patients on my schedule.
Right.
Many people want that, but they didn't say it, so the person doesn't know that, right?
Right.
So if it's an insurance-based practice, I may say that I want my account receivable aging. I want in the 0 to 30 bucket, I want 80% of my claims to be there. Which means, one, I'm seeing the number of patients I want to see. Number two, I'm getting paid for my visits, right? I can decide that I want to have, 120 new Google reviews every year, because that's something that if I do, it positions me as the number one practice in that area, right? So you see how just with that, the person can execute with the precision of a sniper.
Yes.
And those are, if you notice, all of those things I talked about, they're all revenue generators. They're all things that will impact what I want anyway. So I'm clear on what I want. The person is clear on what, their role does. I have clarified that this is the way this role will pay for itself and then some. Then we're in business. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so it's the clarity. And then, got to meet with your team. I know we don't want to, but you got to meet with your team. I don't know if this has happened to you, because you're a lot more evolved than I was when I started, but I expect my people to come ready-made. I'm like,
Well, I've
what do
learned
you need
from you.
training?
Yeah.
What do you mean you want training? Like, I hired you because you had the training, but this is the deal. Okay. And I have to find another example. I keep using fast food, but no matter how good you are at Burger King, if you go to McDonald's, you will need training.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so putting ourselves in a position where we're willing to do that's why I said is the scale is dirty work. It's hard work, but it's no longer dirty and no longer hard if you just accept this is what needs to happen.
Right.
This is mandatory. There's no way around that, right? And so meeting with the team, I'm phlegmatic at my core, which means, and my natural bent is to avoid conflict at all costs, but you have to have conflict with your team. And when I say conflict, if they're not meeting milestones, conversations need to be had, training needs to be done, accountability needs to be in place. That's what we do. And champions feed on feedback. They thrive when you give them feedback because they want to win.
Yeah.
You got to help them win.
That's
Right?
good.
And so it's things like that, but you can see it's all clarity.
Yeah.
I'm
And
going
you
to start to
reverse
fire.
engineered it. Yeah,
Yes.
you reverse engineered it. You mentioned like starting with what you want and then going backwards to how to get that step by step.
Exactly.
Wow. So, okay. You talk a lot about, and people ask me a lot about delegating. And it's become something I really enjoy talking about because I'm going deeper in learning this new skill. All right. And so, what are some important things that you delegate in the personal and professional life that have really helped you grow to what you've been able to accomplish?
Okay. I will start off by saying I have been an entrepreneur for 14 years. So if you're listening and you hear this, don't get overwhelmed by it. Okay.
Yes.
I started off struggling terribly with delegation because everything looked like things that I must do myself.
Yes.
Okay. So if you struggle with it, this is not an issue. You just pick some things from the buffet we're going to give you now and you run with it. Okay. So I'm a big believer that as a female founder, I'm the CEO of my home and the CEO of my businesses. And so I need a team at home and I need a team in my businesses. I have no interest in doing all the things in my home by myself. None whatsoever. Okay. So at this stage in my life, I don't cook. I don't clean. I don't shop for groceries. I don't shop for clothes. Now notice this is me. So if cooking gives you joy, please cook. It does not give me joy. If shopping for clothes gives you joy, please shop for clothes. It does not give me joy, right? I don't do any of those things. At this point, even though I homeschool my 4 kids, when I homeschooled just 2 of them, I did that by myself. Now that it's 4 of them, I have an administrator for the school. I call it the Unachuku Legacy Project. Okay. To be
I
fancy.
love it.
Right. I have an administrator for that. So this is my vision for the school. You execute the vision. That's the way that goes. So I have a lot of help. A lot of help at home. So that's on that side. In my businesses, I really am at a stage where, I'll start from here. Whenever I think up a new project, it stays in my journal till I find the person who will spearhead the project. That's the way. So I think about the what, I think about the who, and then we can go. But I don't, because I run multiple businesses. I homeschool my kids. My husband and I pastor a church and all this other stuff. I have like 1 million YouTube channels, who knows why, and podcasts and stuff like that. I don't have the bandwidth for, so I look for the arrowhead for the project, and then we execute the project. So that's where I am now. But my goodness, I delegate everything. So my email, my team handles my calendar, my team handles sometimes my social media. They handle, I just love talking. So I still do quite a bit of my social media because it doesn't feel like social media to me. I'm talking to my people, right? So I do that. My podcast and YouTube channel, I literally only turn on the mic and turn it off. And everything after that, the team takes care of that. In the EntreMD Business School, a lot of the administration of it, the team handles. When I do events, I show up to deliver at the event. We just had our vision retreat a week ago at the time of this recording. I didn't know where the location was. I mean, I knew it was in Fort Lauderdale. But when I got there, I'm like, oh, Makita, can you send me the address of the place? I need to give it to the Uber guy. I didn't know where it
Wow.
was. I didn't know where it was. I didn't pick out any of the food. I didn't pick out any of the swag. I just show up to do my thing, which is to create a transformative experience. That's my job. And I go 100% in that, and they go 100% in the other stuff. So, I delegate a lot.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And every time, like when I kind of create my calendar, what I'm going to do and all of that, then I ask myself, I'm like, what is on here? This is a very powerful question to ask. What is on here that somebody else in my life right now could do?
Mm-hmm.
Then I get it off my plate. And I don't just delegate to my team, I delegate to my kids as well, because I don't want to raise rich man's kids. Do you know what that is? People who
Yeah.
were brought up in money and
Yeah.
are henceforth useless. Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to do that. And so I let them do quite a bit. So for instance, if my kids are like, oh, we want to get something from the store, they want to do grocery shopping or whatever. This is the way it happens. I drive them in the car. Usually I have somebody doing this, but if I want them to do it, I'll drive them in the car, take them to the store, park in the parking lot, give my 16-year-old the card. She goes, she does all the shopping. I'm in the car doing whatever I want to do in the car. And then when they come back, I pop open the trunk, they put the things in, we go home. I don't get in there. And she has a budget and she has a list made out. I'm going. I started doing that when she was 14. So I
Wow.
delegate to my kids as well. I register them for school, like the online version. I did the first year. In the second year, she called the school and it's like, I want to get registered. We need to talk to your mom. This is mom. She's fine to register. She registers her own self.
Nice. Nice. Nice.
Right? So I delegate to them too. But I delegate, there are a lot of things you can delegate. This might be helpful for somebody who's struggling with it. I remember once I started feeling stressed out. And every time I start feeling stressed, I'm like, something's out. It means something's out of place. I need to figure out what that is. So I started feeling stressed out with what I did with EntreMD. I was like, okay, what's the problem here? And so I pull out my notebook and I write everything I do for EntreMD, everything I do for the EntreMD Business School. And then I started circling, which of these things can somebody else do? It was 27 things. 27 things on my list I did not need to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, golly. And so I put out an ad and hired an executive assistant immediately and took those 27 things and got them off my plate. And voila, I was at peace again.
Wow. Wow. It's so helpful because I meet a lot of women, and I know I struggled with this at first. I'm getting much better at this, where it's like, if I don't do it, it's not going to be perfect, or, I let somebody else do it and it's not, now I have to edit it. And the time I'm spending to do that, I could have just did it myself. And I have a friend who has businesses and she's really struggling on like letting go, as many women are that run businesses. Any letting go tips? Now I know you're a pro at it 14 years in, but how did you let your hands off when you were a person of excellence and are?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I think one of my big things is baby steps. So you're afraid. You feel like, oh my goodness, it won't be perfect and all of those things. And probably won't be perfect because your definition of perfect is, but you just practice anyway.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I can't get rid of 27 things like Dr. Una, but I can get rid of 3.
Yeah.
Let's see how that goes. And we can let
Mm-hmm.
go of this, right? And so it's starting to do that. And then you get more and more comfortable. It's recognizing that, B work is what is required. Think about the iPhone, right? They have never tried to make a perfect phone. In fact, they're so committed to making imperfect phones that every year there'll be a new one,
Yeah.
right? And so the goal is better. The goal is not perfect. You know what I'm saying? And so if they give you B plus work, it's great. Now, you're a person of faith, so I'll tell you this and you'll find it very amusing. I had one day I was like, oh, I have to do it and all of that stuff. And I felt God lay this in my heart. He was like, excuse you. I delegated preaching and went
Wow.
back to heaven.
Wow.
So what is it that you're doing that is so important that nobody else can do it?
That's good.
I left preaching of my stuff to fishermen. I left,
Yeah. And
right?
even when he was here, he had people around him learning and
Yes.
preparing for the transition.
Yes. So
Wow.
he's like, what are you doing? Delegate that. It's not that serious.
Wow.
And one of my books, you know, I recorded the content and I had an editor, like put it together, like the written version. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I did that. I don't know if I'm really an author, blah, 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 blah. Again, I was like, he says, I have 66 books. Which one did I write?
Wow. We got to know, how do you write these books? Because to me, on the consumer side, it's like, man, these books are coming out fast now. What is your framework of book writing? Sounds like we're delegating some of that.
I'm always delegating everything.
How do you write these books? How do you delegate
So
that?
so the starting point, I'll give you the motive first so it makes sense, right? Because it may or may not be right for someone. But so I'm a student of business and I speak doctor, right? Like, so
Yeah.
these are my two languages. And the way my mind works, I come up with a lot of frameworks. And the frameworks are really, how do you take this very complex thing and make it very simple so you can just get results, right?
Yes.
And so that's why, whether it's my podcast or whether the person is on MD Business School, anybody who's using my stuff and they actually do it, they're going to get results. That's the idea. Like, how do we make this thing simple? And so in this last 6 years of EntreMD, I have developed so many frameworks. And I'm like, these will just change the lives of people. I need to figure out how to document these. Like, they're in the podcast and all of that, but I was like, if I could do books, that would be so transformational. I'm speaking to you now. I have I did 2 books this year. I have 2 completed manuscripts in my Google Drive.
Wow.
And so my goal is I want to do a book a quarter because I have to squeeze all this stuff out and put it out there so doctors can use it and do what they need to do. Okay. So for me, how am I going to do 4 books a year? That's the question, right? That created what I'm
Yes.
about to tell you. So how am I going to do that? And so for me, I am a sniper with my words because I've spoken so much. I've done so much with the podcast. And I have clarity is something that I'm very big on. So I know how to get all the fluff out and just, build out this pretty framework. So a lot of times what I will do is I'll sit and I'll teach my content, right? So I may have 10 hours of recordings or whatever, and then I give it to somebody who loves to write
Mm.
and who knows that I don't want to hear a second, like a letter of their voice in my book.
Mm. Yeah.
Right? So it's my IP, is them writing as a true ghostwriter. I mean, you're a ghost.
Yeah.
Nobody can hear you. They only
Hmm.
hear me. And then it's a match made in heaven. That's what I do.
Amazing. How did you go about finding the right ghostwriter?
Referrals,
Okay.
referrals. Yeah.
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 Okay. Super helpful. Okay. So we're delegating quite a bit and super helpful to hear your process on that. I want to definitely touch on family because here we're talking about balancing business and wellness, and many busy professional women are also possibly married or mothers. And you're a mother of 4 with multiple businesses that are very successful, and you have a beautiful marriage, and your husband's a pastor. You all pastor a church. My husband's also a pastor. And
I did not know that.
yes, yes. And we just transitioned into homeschooling our daughter, Ava. And so a lot of parallels. Then, so tell us a little bit about how you balance the home life, how marriage, how business doesn't bleed into the marriage, and any pearls you can give the women on all of the beauty of that balance.
Yeah, what an amazing question. And I'm such a sucker for good marriages and kids and all of that stuff. The starting point for us is my husband and I, we've been married for 18 years at this point, and the starting point for us is our priorities. So, our number one priority is our relationship with God, so our
Hmm.
spiritual life. That's number one. Number two is our family. So it's God first, then it's family, before ministry, before business, before any of those other things. So having that priority puts us in a position where we're never sacrificing our family for ministry or for business.
Mm.
Now, does that mean of course, there are times where you are required to give more time to business? For instance, when I started my practice, I didn't qualify for loans and all of these things. I trained in Nigeria, so I didn't have long enough credit history and all of those things. And so we self funded. So I would have times I'm working for 21 days straight because I'm working in the ER, and then, I'll go back to the practice and all of those things. So I'm not saying there are not times where you don't do that, but it's the priority. So even in doing that, my husband and I, we said, okay, if we can focus and work this business thing and get it off the ground, it gives us even more time to be with our family. And because I was doing that, he was more flexible with time to be there for the kids while I was doing all of those things. And even though we didn't have all the time in the world, the time that we did have, we made that quality time.
Mm-hmm.
So you see what I'm saying? So we still spend the time with the kids. We still spend the time with our date nights and all of those things. So yes, that was busy, but our priority was still our priority, right? So it's God first, family, and then ministry, business, all of those. And for us, it's ministry and then business. And so when we say priority, sometimes we'll say, oh yeah, my family is my priority, family first and all that. No, when we look at your schedule, we will know who is first, right? And so for us, what that means is, Tuesday, which today we happen to be recording, so this is later today. Tuesday's our date night. Every Tuesday is our date night.
Nice.
And if for some reason my husband is going to be out of town, we do a date night somewhere before that to make up for it. Tuesday's our date night. So much so our kids see us at 7:00 on Tuesday. They're like, what are you guys doing here? Isn't it date night? So much so that the members of our church do not call us on Tuesday.
Wow.
Except it's truly a terrifying emergency that no other pastor in the church can handle, because they know Tuesday is date night.
I love that.
And then for our kids, you listen to the podcast, so you know this. I have this thing called Meet Week, right? So it's an acronym. It's MTWK, meaningful time with kids. And so I may be busy, I may be ripping or roaring, but I know that I have to take some time during the day and intentionally spend meaningful time, not all of us on our devices, but having conversation and listening to them and looking at, and all of that stuff. So we schedule those things. We are very busy, my husband and I. And we can have, like, for instance, in July, we would host a national convention. And we know that the preparation up to that is intense and the time of that is intense. Usually we'll do a two-week vacation with the kids before that. And so when they see us busy in July, they're like, oh, that's their time. But we had our time.
Right.
And you know what I mean? Like, so we filled up their cups and then we go do what we need to do. So it doesn't mean, because some people, what they make that mean is, I'm not going to work hard in my business because I prioritize my family. That is not what that means, right? That's not what it means. You're intentional about it, and the people in question know they're first. My kids know they come ahead of ministry, and they know they do not come ahead of God, but they understand they come ahead of the business and all of that. I think one other thing we do is we don't separate our worlds. So our kids are heavily involved in the ministry, they're heavily involved in the businesses, and so even in those things, we're doing life with them.
Wow.
Right? It's not a separate thing. When I go to speak on stages, I'll take my daughter with me. Sometimes she'll do my introduction. I started doing that with her when she was 8.
I love that.
Right? And
Ava, prepare Ava.
So it's not like, oh, mommy went somewhere to speak. We went to speak. It becomes part of that time. So instead of making it separate, we just include them in it. And, as they get older, we include them more and more. And I think the final thing I'll say is, being a wife, being a mom is a challenging thing. There's a lot of guilt if you let it. You're going to make a lot of mistakes because there's no manual. And I think giving ourselves grace, I know it sounds almost cliche, but it's like, just tone it down. Give it your best shot. Leave the rest with God. Like, Lord, this is above my pay grade. You know what I mean? And don't try to be like any other mom. That hurt me so bad, because when I started homeschooling my kids, I was surrounded by these homeschooling moms who make homemade granola bars and, do all these things that I do not do. Remember, I said I don't cook, I don't clean, I don't do any of that. And, I'm African. Like, African people cook, like African women cook, So I'm just like, just bizarre, quote unquote, on my own. And I was used to feel weird about it. And then one day I just felt like God said in my heart, like, you know what they have is they give their kids gardening. They give their kids how to make homemade granola bars, how to run a home, all of those things. And that is amazing, but you don't have it. But what you do have is leaning into personal development, how to build a business, how to speak confident and all that. Let them give their kids what they have. You give your kids what you have.
Amen.
So I don't feel bad about it at all. Like, I just own who I am. I show up in the marriage the way I know how to show the best version of me. I support my husband the best possible way I can. I do the best for my kids. I just let God handle the rest, you know? And then again, I lean into people who are strong in what I'm not strong in, right? So
Mm-hmm.
my sister, she's a pediatrician as well, but we are polar opposites. So she loves to garden. At the center of my house is my office. Like all the conversations are happening around my office and all that. The center of her home is the kitchen. Like
Mm-hmm.
she loves to cook. She loves to do all these things. She loves to garden. She loves to sew clothes. I mean, I have no idea how she can do all those things. So, like right now, they're at her house. My kids are at her house. And I'm like, yeah, go there. I'm like, I tell my sister this week, please teach them how to make lasagna and all of that because I am not going to teach them, but they need to learn
Yes.
because they may not be married to someone like my husband who doesn't care. I don't know. You know what I mean? Maybe that's, I don't know. I just want them equipped. So I send them
Yes.
somewhere else to learn that stuff. Right. And
Mm.
so it's like, take a chill pill, give it your best shot, prioritize your priorities. And, you know, there were times when I couldn't spend as much time with them. Now I'm with them almost 24/7. When I go on business trips, I take them with me because they're homeschooled. So,
I
you
love
know,
it.
so yeah, but we can have it all.
Wow.
There's a strategy to it, but we can have it all.
It's a lot of strategy, and you shared so much of the strategy today. We always end the podcast with asking our guests, how are you balancing business and wellness in this season? And wellness is a big part, so important to me. But I love that you show the wellness aspect of your journey and exercising, and you've been showing that you've been lifting weights, which I love. And so, how are you realistically doing all that you're doing, balancing your own personal wellness in this?
Yeah. So it comes back to priorities as well. So I think about 90-year-old me a lot. At
90.
yes.
Yep.
So at 90, I want to be able to lift my grandbabies.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to stand up straight. I want to enjoy my 90th birthday party. But that is a wish that will never come to pass, except 45-year-old me does certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And at 90, it's too late. There's no amount of weightlifting you can do at 90 to make up for the fact that you didn't lift at 45. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yes.
so I think about her a lot. And so I come back today and I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter as much today, but it will matter so much a few decades from now.
Yeah.
And so because it's a priority, then I figure out how to get it done, right? Now, practically what that means, again, it goes back to delegation because I could clean the house or I could lift weights. I could grocery shop or I could lift weights. Do you see what I'm saying? Like it
Yeah.
goes back to the things that don't need to be on my plate, I get them off. And I'm very ruthless about only allowing on my schedule, well, mostly only allowing on my schedule things that are 20% activities. So these are the highest of highest level activities that only I can do
Mm-hmm.
because that is the secret to getting a whole lot more done by doing a lot less. There's
Mm-hmm.
no way to do that except doing those 20% activities. The problem with the 20% activities is that they are uncomfortable. You would have to learn them. Chances are you don't know them when you decide this is the activity that I need to do. They're easiest to procrastinate on. And so the more I discipline myself to do that, the more of my time I get back, right? Like for instance, training your team is a 20% activity,
Yeah.
which we don't like to do. But every time you train your team, you buy more time back because now you have your time and you have 8 hours from somebody else. If you have 10 people, it's 80 hours from other people. So that's
Wow.
a very high level activity. But it's like, yeah, I'll do it later, or it doesn't really take all that, or I can just do it myself. No. So my aim is to spend 80% of my time doing 20% activities.
Got it. Got
The
it.
more I can do that, the more I have for all the other wellness things because I have time to.
Dr. Una, you have shared so many jewels. Ladies, I hope you have enjoyed this as much as I have. Share with the fam. I know some of you are going to have more questions about homeschooling. I'll do a whole homeschooling episode too, but check out Dr. Una's one of her latest episodes on Entre MD podcast because she really shares the details of her homeschooling journey because I get that question a lot now as well. So where can the fam find you on socials?
Yeah, so I think the easier place would be to go to my website, entremd.com. So ENTREMD.com. And you'll find my Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, podcast, books, events, the whole nine yards. And yeah, let's connect and keep the conversation going.
Yes, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure for me, and I'm so excited about it. I can't wait for the fam to enjoy this episode. You all, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a comment. Let us know your favorite part of the episode. Share it with other busy professional women in your life who are also balancing business and wellness. Leave a review for the podcast. We want to hear from you, hear what you're enjoying, hear your feedback. If you're a busy professional woman with a service or a product that other busy professional women would benefit from, then let us know. Reach out to our team because we'd love to have you sponsor an episode, and join the fam on Instagram at Dr. Jade MD. That is the hub of all things She Inspires, and I can't wait to see you on the next episode of the She Inspires podcast.